Afternoon and welcome to the Village of Mount Pleasant Plan Commission meeting for April 19th, 2023. Roll call, please.
Bhatia.
Here.
Meyer.
Here.
Driver.
Here.
Hewitt.
Here.
Rissler.
Here.
Van Beckham.
Here.
Bozanovsky.
All right, then next on the agenda, we'll be looking for the approval of the meeting minutes for March 22nd, 2023.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve.
Second. Okay, we got a motion, a couple motions in a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll go to 12,001 Braun Road Site Plan Review SP 23-8. Sam.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, Sunvest Solar LLC applied to add solar panels around the northeast stormwater retention pond at the Foxconn site. The applicant coordinated with We Energies and Foxconn for the installation, which has about 1 megawatt of capacity. The applicant estimates the panels will produce about 1,600 megawatt hours per year. We Energies will lease the land from Foxconn for 25 years with an added 5-year extension choice. We Energies will handle all maintenance and repairs for the array. The applicant's narrative had extensive details, which was included in your packet. This has to go through our formal site plan review process, and as a reminder, anything in areas 1, 2, and 3 of TID 5 also are subject to the village board, which is why this is a recommendation to the village board, which is atypical for a site plan that's zoned appropriately for you all, but this is in a special area. This site meets all of our site development standards as we went through in the packet. The only thing to call out specifically is the applicant applied for alternative compliance for the landscaping and screening section of the ordinances. We read solar panels to be mechanical equipment, so typically they would have to be screened from public rights of way. However, pretty logically, when you start screening solar panels, they start worrying about shade over the panels and what's kind of the purpose there. So the applicant instead proposed moving the impacted vegetation around in the site, as well as installing native meadow and prairie vegetation surrounding the panel sites, which was called out in your packet as well. The native meadow and prairie vegetation would replace the existing turf lawn, supply habitat beneficial to bees, other insects, birds, and other animal species, and We Energies would maintain the native areas biannually. So we were good with that. They're providing, technically the code defers to me to be able to make that call. Usually, because this is going to you in the village board, obviously you're supposed to weigh in as well, but ultimately it made sense to me as an alternative compliance for the landscaping section. They were providing pretty significant amount. We asked and we did put in what type of native seed mix they were using, and it's the WSDOT standard number 75, so I called that out in your packet as well. So with that, we also, sorry, I should mention there's a fiscal impact special for solar panels. We don't anticipate that the panels or landscaping improvements will really affect the taxable value of the property all that much. However, due to a section in state law, the village will qualify for about a $2,300 increase to our shared revenue from the state, plus an additional amount for substations and general structures based on a rate of 6 mils for the project. So while we won't collect more taxes from this, we will receive slightly larger increased paid shared revenue payment from the state of Wisconsin. We also wanted to highlight, we increasingly recommend that applicants minimize unused mowed turf areas, which particularly around stormwater ponds attract geese and supply little valuable habitat for native things that we just called out. The village staff appreciate that this application replaces some of the areas on the Foxconn site with both renewable energy generation and added native habitat. The village staff encourages other property owners in the village to explore these improvements as well. Just as a reminder to you all, we allow solar panels, both building mounted and ground mounted, by right in all our zoning districts. So there are some special rules if you're in a residential zoning district on where you can put them, but on a commercial and industrial zoning districts, we say basically you're good to go. So they're subject to site planning rules, obviously, that's why they're in front of you, but the use category is allowed by right. So we hope that other people will explore these options to use underutilized areas in these types of facilities, whether they're privately owned or in publicly owned coordination with a partner like We Energies. Doesn't matter to us, we just like to see them. So I can answer any technical questions you have. There are representatives here from We and Sunvest if you have questions about the panels themselves, but pretty simple project.
Okay. Tom?
Sam, can you explain how tall these will be and once constructed?
Yeah, you can see it's on figure, I think, 1 of in there. They're less than 10 feet in height. They're about 8.5 feet. They're anchored by essentially a steel beam that's driven into the ground. So there's not like a poured concrete foundation.
And the vegetation is going to be lower than the panels. I mean, what we're talking about.
Correct. Below and between the panels.
Without any other vegetation. So obviously, the project will be visible from the roads. I mean,
Yeah, there's a pretty significant amount of fencing and landscaping out on the Foxconn side already, which is one of the things that fed into us being okay with this type of recommendation. But so they'll be visible, certainly, but they won't be like the first thing you see. You'll have to look through some existing vegetation surrounding the site, both public trees and the private ones on the Foxconn site, as well as Foxconn's fence there too. So you'll be able to kind of see it, the interior of it, but you'll be able to see them.
and as far as the native planting goes, you're generally comfortable. I would think it's in Foxconn, Wisconsin Energy, and the villages, all of the same purpose, that it'll look nice. I mean, the maintenance they're proposing to do and the landscaping, you think will ultimately, once it grows in and grows up, it'll be a nice looking facility or a nice landscaping.
Yeah, I mean, some people have a aesthetic preference for mowed lawns and nothing else, and obviously it won't make those people happy, but generally from a wider village perspective, we try to encourage native areas. I mean, lower maintenance, obviously all the benefits to the birds and the bees, and it also just tends to be kind of discourages a lot of that geese habitat, which is probably our most frequent complaint that we receive about stormwater ponds. They won't land there if there's like more extensive vegetation or not as large of groupings out there. So while this won't completely remove geese, Foxconn has a lot of stormwater ponds out there. In this individual pond, it should help to mitigate some of those factors.
Okay, thanks.
Sam, are these similar to, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but are these similar to the ones that are going on in Kenosha County right now, as far as height off the ground?
They should be approximately similar, yeah.
Then it's,
Yeah, some of these
I
are
don't see that as
fixed
an
and then
issue.
some of them kind of tilt, so they'll look a little bit different depending on, there's 4 installations, but ultimately, yeah, they're utility scale ground mounted solar panels.
and is this something that you see that's gonna probably happen to most of the lakes? And there's this start of something that's gonna continue with the rest of the lakes in the Foxconn community?
I don't know. They would, it's up to them. This is the only application received at the time. We haven't had discussions about the other stormwater ponds. That said, from our perspective, we would certainly welcome it if that's what they choose to do. And that's why we wanted to call it out in the staff summary, not just Foxconn or TID 5, like this is allowed across the village. So there are plenty of other areas that could support either building mounted or ground mounted solar panels that we would encourage it.
Go ahead, John.
If you want to have a hint as to how the solar farms are growing already in the county, you can go west on Highway KR, and you can go west on Braun Road, all the way out to Highway 45, and there are solar farms being developed all out in that area that would give you a good perspective as to how this is growing and everything then too. So just take a ride west on either 45, or I mean, all the way out to Highway 45, but on Braun or KR. And you'll see a lot of solar farms out there.
And
We
one nice
wanted-
thing about this, it just seems like this is the best use of this strip of land around a pond. I mean, otherwise it would just be not used at all.
Exactly. This isn't actively farmed fields, or, there is some controversy, mainly in like rural counties, whether it should be farmed or it's solar panels. And, that is kind of a wider conversation that's happening across the country. But in this individual circumstance, like you said, it's just grass now. So it's not producing food or anything else. So might as well use it for this. I think it's a great win-win and a creative use of space.
Ron?
No, I don't have a question, but I have a couple of comments, again, coming from my background in my working life, I used to work with the OEMs of the solar panels, and in the national debate also about the green energy. This is a perfect example of where there's room for green energy on a localized land which otherwise will not be well used. And so I'm very pleased to hear the agreement between Foxconn and We Energy. Like to me, it should be an example of where there is a room to make use of the solar panel and all the green energy for the use of a particular area or the customers or the industry. And like we heard, if we don't have it, this land will be, not very well used. So again, the more I read about the project, the more I like it. I think it's a great example.
Excellent. You asked for a technical question. How much is a megawatt of power? How many homes or?
I believe it's in your packet, the total installation. The We Energy guys might correct me, but I believe it's like a couple hundred worth of energy over the entire annual production year. So,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one small question. Sam, maybe you or We Energy or somebody can answer the question. For the 1 megawatt capacity, how many square feet or how many square yards of the panel?
I don't have a direct number for you. It's somewhere.
Approximately.
Yeah, it's somewhere in the packet, but I don't have a number off the top of my head for you.
No big deal. Okay.
We don't have like a green space ratio or anything, so that wasn't really a number that we needed to check off when we were reviewing it.
I was just trying to calculate in my head, comparison of the solar energy with other forms of energy, how much land you require to produce
Sure,
that
yeah.
one. So just kind of curious. Thank you. No problem.
Any other questions for Sam? If not, would the applicant like to come up? If we can get your name and address, please. Up to the microphone there. Thank you.
Good afternoon, John Doherty, project developer with Sunvest Solar. We're the applicant and representing the project between We Energies and Foxconn.
Couple questions you've heard already. The size of the, you have
Yep,
that?
it's just under 64,000 square feet is the project
64,000?
area. Mhm.
Thank you.
And was Sam pretty close in estimating what a megawatt would power?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what is the average home, but roughly 300 homes would be the equivalent production. Nice.
Nice one. Anything else you can add for us? Any questions you have of us?
No, very much appreciate the questions here, and Sam, thank you for being thorough in the presentation and working with us. And yeah, we're here, representatives from We Energies, Foxconn, and Sunvest. If there are additional questions, we're happy to answer them.
Okay, Tom?
Who manufactures the panels and most of the hardware going up?
A variety of companies. So we have specified in the packet racking, which is the structural steel that builds the array. They're from some American firms. TerraSmart Energy is one of them. The modules themselves are by a company called Canadian Solar. And the inverters, which is the piece of equipment that takes the direct current electricity and inverts it to alternating current. I'd have to check, I guess, our spec sheet, but CPS, I believe, is the company that manufactures those. But it's a global industry. There's definitely Asian manufacturer, and there's American-made material, both.
Okay. Any other questions for John or Sam? If not, any public comment on this? Okay. Ram,
I'd like to have the honor to make the motion,
please do.
because this project falls right into my my working life background. Anyway, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recommend that the Plan Commission move to recommend approval of the 12001 Braun Road Site Plan Review SP-23-8, subject to the Village Board.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. I like to see these things. All right, next on the agenda, 9110 Megan's Way Site Plan Review, SP 23-9.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the applicant, Mark Lake and Wangar Development, applied to build 180 multifamily units on their property directly north and south of Megan's Way. The development will consist of 3 8-unit townhome-style multifamily buildings, 6 26-unit 2-story buildings, and a maintenance building. The village board amended the zoning for the subject properties with Ordinance 6-2023. As we talked about a little bit in the zoning application that was up, I believe that was last month or 2 months ago, this is a reconfiguration of their Phase 2. So originally they were projected to kind of head west from the existing terminus of Megan's Way, and instead they're going to shift more to utilize the existing public infrastructure that's already there. Something that we appreciate still is that there is the inclusion of townhomes, which is a townhome style multifamily building, which is a slightly different product type for us here in the Village of Mount Pleasant. So we're excited to see how that leases up. And the applicant reconfigured some of their building designs to use what has been leasing well for them out in Economowalk. So the buildings are 26 units, but they're about the same size as the former 20-unit buildings due to kind of a reconfiguration of the architecture of the building. So even though there's more units in them, they shouldn't appear more massive. And to my understanding, the applicant can clarify, but that comes just due to a better utilization of space within the buildings. We had 11 conditions that we wanted to call out. They're all pretty minor site conditions, but I'll run them through them with you. First, the applicant shall amend the site plan so that the principal street building setbacks are 20 feet. Alternatively, the applicant may apply for an admin adjustment to reduce the minimum required street setbacks by up to 5 feet, so long as that the requested admin adjustments will not bring the overall average buildings or lots out of compliance with the established minimums or maximums of the zoning district. This was similar to their previous phased application, which they did apply for and receive an administrative adjustment. The setbacks in the Phase 1 are 15 feet, and that was due to a zoning mechanism before we rewrote the zoning code. So A, they would like to match some of the existing setbacks in the development, and B, as the road curves, some of the corners of the building encroach upon that 20 feet. So it's not like every building is set at 15 feet. It's just that some of the, when you're putting a rectangle on a curve, sometimes it gets closer. 2, the applicant shall amend the architectural plans to show building elevations for the maintenance building, which we'd like to see. 3, the applicant shall amend the site plan to clearly show the location of short and long-term bicycle parking spaces. They were identified on the plans. We just like them to highlight and call them out. Generally in these multifamily buildings, we've seen people either set aside garage spaces or dedicated areas within the buildings for bicycle parking, either which is fine and comply with the ordinances. 4, the applicant shall amend the site plan to move all sidewalks within the public right-of-way. I had a conversation with the applicant about this. The reason some of the sidewalks kind of meander in and out of the public right-of-way is due to some ADA reasons for like grades of reaching the sidewalks. And understandably, the applicant doesn't want to build like a sidewalk in front of the building and then a sidewalk 5 feet away that's in the public right-of-way. So we agree that's kind of silly. So as long as I'd like to amend that condition a little bit, we're fine with them being outside of the public right-of-way, but they will need to record a public access easement so that people aren't trespassing when they're walking down the sidewalk, which we've had other applicants do in the past as well. 5, the applicant shall amend the site plan to specify the internal pedestrian circulation system, drive aisle crossings. They must be clearly differentiated through elevation changes, paving material, other equally effective methods of safely accommodating non-motorized travel approved by me. Striping alone does not meet this requirement. 6, the applicant shall amend the site plan to provide a 6-inch curb or approved wheelbarrow when abutting required setbacks, landscape areas, or adjoining property lines. 7, the applicant shall amend the site plan to reduce the maximum light level at any point on a lot line to 0.5-foot candles within or adjacent to a residential zoning district, or 2.0-foot candles within all other zoning districts. There was just a small area that was above the 2.0-foot candle on one of the lighting elements. So that should be a pretty minor change. It's not like it's the entire lighting plan. 8, the applicant shall amend the landscaping plan to provide vehicular use area screening for all vehicular use areas located within 50 feet of the public right-of-way. There were a couple edges of some of the parking lots on the corner lots that didn't have that landscaping screening, so it should be a relatively minor tweak on those landscaping plans. We just wanted to make sure those areas were screened appropriately. 9, the applicant shall amend the landscaping plan to provide vehicular area screening for all areas located within 25 feet of adjacent residentially zoned lots. That's mainly on the back side of building, I think, 7. Yeah. And then 10, the applicant shall amend the landscaping plan to ensure no portion of the parking lot lies more than 150 feet of an interior perimeter canopy tree. There was just one parking lot that needed a revision there, so it should be just moving a single tree. And then 11, the applicant shall amend the landscaping plan to screen all mechanical equipment visible from any public street. There were just a couple AC units that needed to be screened on the architectural plans. From a fiscal impact, the village board approved a development agreement where the developer guaranteed a minimum value $23,600,000 as of January 1st, 2026. The village in turn shall supply a municipal revenue obligation of $5.3 million of pay-as-you-go assistance to the developer over the remaining life of TID 2. The revenue obligation is subject to a one-time look-back upon stabilization based on a maximum cash-on-cash rate of return of 14%. The minimum guaranteed value creates a value per acre for the development of about $1.8 million. The village assessor estimated the value per unit of approximately $150,000 a unit, which equates to about $27 million worth of value, or just above $2 million an acre. These values give a 20-year repaving estimate about 7.6 to 8.7%, which corresponds to a village paving average of 8.3% and shows that the development will cover its share of long-term municipal obligations. That is particularly notable because this is along a collector roadway as well, so it's paying for an increased right-of-way. So these buildings, in kind of the logic when you're locating more valuable buildings along busier roadways to help pay for those expanded facilities, these pull their fair share. From additional staff considerations, the applicant shows a private drive between the buildings 8 and 9, which functions as a private continuation of Veranda Lane. The village may require the conversion of this private drive to a public street once the applicant submits plans for more development southwards. The village staff appreciate the applicant's willingness to construct townhome-like products, as I said, within the development, which mixes up the types of buildings within the development and supplies a different unit type for the village. With those 11 conditions, including the modified one for the sidewalk easement, we recommend that the Plan Commission moves to approve the site plan.
That was a lot.
It was a lot. Happy to dig through any of that.
Mr. Chairman,
ahead.
Sam, I guess, we're approving a site plan, yet everything that needs to be done is part of the site plan. So ultimately, we should be looking at the completed site plan as is, why did we not get one before this meeting? Because this is going to be on you to approve that they made all the correct changes.
Yep.
Without us seeing it.
Correct.
And just curious why we just didn't wait, or why they didn't get it here for this meeting.
That was actually our error, so I'm going to take the blame for that. They submitted on time. Just with Microsoft and everything that's happened within the last month, we've kind of been at maximum capacity. So we got this review done in time, but we didn't have enough time to supply them comments for them to revise the plans and get it back to us in time for your guys' meeting. So that's more on us than it is the applicant. And it's just because we've been kind of very busy as of late. So
we were also gone for like a week.
That's also true. We were at the National Planning Conference for one of those weeks as well. So
Is there any reason why we can't give a provisional approval and then come back next month and have us take a hard look at it at all? Or
I mean, I would rather you just either table it or delegate us the authority to review it. Either way is cleaner. Like provisional approval is essentially just a tabling. So, I mean, depends on you guys. It's really at what level you're comfortable delegating us the authority. I think the changes are relatively minor. So it's just kind of checking some boxes. It looks like there's a lot of them, but in actuality, most of those landscaping changes are like move one tree from here to there or add a couple bushes along the edge of a single parking lot. So from my eyes, I typically, if there's like major recommended changes, I either won't bring it forward to you all or I will clarify it that these are major changes. Like I want you to consider the ask or not, but the reason I felt comfortable bringing this one forward with this number of conditions was they were all relatively minor. So you're not like delegating me some crazy amount of authority to approve a building design you haven't seen or anything like that.
I assume, Mark, you are okay with all the provisions here, all the conditions, or if you could speak on that, we'd love to hear from you. Sure. Thanks.
Mark Lake, Wongard Partners. Yes, sir. The plans, when you look at them, you could see that there are a couple things that Sam had brought up, and it is basically the one landscaping plan. And I think when you look at the lighting plan, change it from a 2-point, and it's, for a house that's 1,000 feet away. But it's a lot line of a residential district, so we have to make sure that that fits. So a lot of the things that Sam had brought up are technical in nature and fine tuning a site plan. We certainly will have a revision to this. We got, like Sam said, we got the comments, a little while ago, so we didn't have enough time to make the changes for presentation today. The biggest thing that you'll note in our plan is actually, these buildings are the same, basically the same size as the existing buildings that you have out there right now on Tivoli Phase 1. But if you toured the buildings, you see there's some inefficiencies. And hallways to get to garages and stuff like that. All of that brought it back down so that would allow, under the same space, same building size, to add 3 or 4 more units to a building. And so that's essentially what we have. We got new colors, not just the 3 colors that we have in the existing one. Now each building will have its own accent color with a set of basic field colors, but we wanted to make part of our original plan is to make it more neighborly. And in order to make it more neighborly, we wanted to make sure that when somebody who lived there, like especially in the townhomes, that you could see your unit, and your unit was divided by a different color. So it's whether it's white or the group of whites and grays and blues, and then an accent color. So every other unit, and those townhomes are only 8 units long. So we decided to make sure that every other unit was a different color or same family, but you could separate them out. We stretched that also into the stacked flats. Now there's units above and below, but we wanted to make sure that it was also broken up, so it did look like it's a bunch of single family or individual units. The landscaping plan, the one thing there was the one extension of Veranda Road. We show it as a driveway because we haven't planned for anything in the future, and that's a condition on this plan. We show it as a driveway. We certainly could have showed it any other way, but if and or when it gets extended to the south, we fully understand that would have to go through, and the buildings themselves are already set back far enough off of that driveway, just like they are to the north of Megan's Way. So it already sets the stage for that development. And again, getting back to Sam's comments, I think to your comments, I think 8 of the 10 are landscaping related, and they're just on that one sheet. We have no problem, sending a revised landscaping plan in for your review and approval at a later date. We kind of want to get started with everything else, but if it's just, hey, the Plan Commission wants to see the landscaping plan and review and approve the landscaping plan, I'd be happy to send it as a special item, come down and discuss the revisions with you.
Excuse me, none of those landscaping issues or the lighting issues are going to require you to change the footprint of any of the buildings?
No.
The buildings stay where they are?
Yep.
And you didn't include any blue spruce in your landscaping?
I don't know that answer.
I couldn't hardly read it, but I hope you didn't, because it's well overplanted down here.
Agreed. Generally, the good thing is that we have a good landscape architect, Tom Mortensen, from R.E. Smith, and he really knows what's usually around buildings and what goes on in various communities. And if it's a non-native species, he doesn't usually favor it. And if it's something that usually dies or just sometimes grows too big, too tall, too fast, those will be left off a plan as well.
Any other questions for Mark?
No, I have a question for Sam.
For Sam, go ahead. Thank you,
Sam,
Mark.
In these situations where if we approve this, then you're going to follow up with the developer on getting your conditions met, do you put something in the file or some document created in your office that says, yes, all the conditions have been met? So there's some evidence that a year from now, somebody calls you up, or 6 months from now, there's something in the file that says there were 11 conditions, all 11 were met. I, Sam, sign off on this so that it's there.
Yeah, what we do on OpenGov through our online permitting thing is it actually never deletes an old file. It just will if you re-upload to the same spot. So landscaping plans, it'll upload as like version 2. So it'll track the plans that way. They're often identified in the corner with the revision dates as well on the actual plan set. But then on the approval plan, the way we issue an approval letter, it'll have all the approved conditions on it. And then when they meet some conditions, say they submit a lighting plan that's revised, and then 3 weeks later they submit a landscaping plan that's revised, each time we'll remove those conditions from the approval letter and then reissue them an approval letter. So you'll be able to track as the conditions come off, we're reissuing like what they still need to do. So, and then you can go back over time and pull each one of those approval letters to see like, what's the difference between version 3 and version 5, or what did they accomplish between here and here. So it's all tracked automatically through the program, and it's a lot easier for us to manage now that we're all through online permitting than it was previously.
What would happen if, not that it's going to happen here necessarily, but if there were 11 conditions and somewhere 2 weeks from now, you or the developer says we can't meet 2 of them? Is there any notification back to anybody, to us or anyone else, that, you guys said there were going to be 11 conditions that needed to be met and they weren't? Or is it just fall into your category, your discretion, whether you can live with it?
It really depends on, because sometimes there are ordinance sections that give alternative means of compliance. So if they go with like an option A and then they change it to an option B, oftentimes that would only require an administrative site plan review. So they would have to apply and receive approval for like a modification to a landscaping plan that doesn't change the amount of landscaping, but they're just going with an entirely different option. That actually just happened on the Case site, where they had a large masonry wall, if you remember, around the entire site, and they actually just applied to change it to an opaque fence with like additional trees and bushes outside of it. So they went from only wall to like fence and landscaping option. That requires a $250 site plan administrative change to myself. But there are limitations in the ordinance to what we can approve through that method. So if it is above 5,000 square feet, or if they're applying to significantly reduce the amount of landscaping on the site, or a couple other variables, then it would just kick back to the Plan Commission for review. So.
Also, if they don't meet the conditions, then, zoning administrator, the development director can withhold issuing building permits or certificate of occupancy or anything like that. So they don't really go anywhere until those are completed.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why we've tried to hold off on like the advisory conditions of like, just a heads up, you also need to send it to the village engineer. So the only things that are appearing on conditions are really just checklist items that are pertain to your approval. So they're tracked pretty thoroughly over time, particularly now that we're on the OpenGov system. But ultimately, it is up to you. I mean, I don't want to say like, definitely delegate me the authority. It's totally your call.
Rob?
Mr. Chairman, based on everything that I've heard from Sam, from Cam, from Mark, I understand and totally agree with Joe's comments and my colleagues' comments here, but since these conditions are not major landscape, I have confidence that our staff is more than qualified and experienced to be able to take care of each one of these. And so based on everything I've heard, I have no problem to recommend the approval so that we don't delay the project and we don't adversely impact the schedule.
Okay. Before you make a motion, I'd just like to follow up with Joe one
I
more
just
time.
have one last question. Mark brought it up in regards to the extension of Veranda Lane. Is there an easement that we're building into this? Do we have that recorded as going to be a road at some point?
It's not an easement or a road reservation. That road is the CSM is already done. So the simple answer to your question is no. However, as they continue southwards, really depends on their future development plans. So that's why we left it kind of vague. But ultimately, because we've had a development agreement and continue to have a development agreement with Vanguard, there is an avenue for negotiation that is kind of completely separate from the standard code of ordinances for things like roadways and stuff like that. So we have a method to capture that requirement through future development agreement negotiations with them if they choose to come in for future phases.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend approval of the 9110 Megan Way Site Plan Review SP-23-9, subject to the recommended conditions for approval.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Questions? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Bob. All right, next will be Ordinance 11-2023, a zoning map amendment for 423 South Fancher Road, zoning map amendment ZMA 23-5.
All right. Hello, everyone. Let me pull this up. Okay. So this is, you've seen this a few times over the last few months. The applicant, Timothy Zelko, applied to amend the zoning map from RE Estate Residential to B2 Community Business on 423 Fancher Road, which is not coincidentally right next to the development that we were just talking about. Wishes to convert the existing home to a wedding event venue. So going through, it is consistent with the comprehensive plan because we just amended the comprehensive plan. So that amendment takes this property and areas further south, approximately the east-west width of this property, and zones them to a mixed residential / commercial. We are currently in the stages of the local area plan for this, which would sort of define the mixed commercial residential as something that is mutually agreeable between both uses. So that, in our view, that would not include like sort of a heavy commercial use, such like, you know, drive-throughs or gas stations or something like that, beyond even how they're limited from B2 zoning. So the B2 district permits assembly or entertainment type 1 uses by right, which are spectator events up to, but no more than 250 guests. Because of the additional, okay, I'll go continuing. So that all the other procedures have been met. We do not expect much of a fiscal impact from this because the building is already there. Any fiscal improvement would be from the site plan process and any improvements to the site in order to qualify it as a business. Additional considerations. Due to the nature of this request as a business conversion using an existing legally conforming building in the RE zone, staff advises that the rezone be contingent on the Plan Commission approving a site plan within 1 year. So that if the business use doesn't transpire on the property, if it doesn't pan out, the zoning continues on as a legal conforming residential estate lot that it is today. That's to sort of avoid any of the, you know, pitfalls if this gets rezoned and this doesn't happen and somewhere down the line we're kind of hemmed into something that we didn't foresee. So the staff recommend approval of the rezone based on the one condition listed, and recommending approval of that to the village board on Monday, and the zoning public hearing will be also on that date. To this point, no one has really spoken for or against the multiple public hearings and notices we've sent about this property and conversion, which, given how many came out 6 months ago, it I mean, they certainly have the ability to come out and show up. So that says something to us. And no one's really commented on via phone or email.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Robin, I could be wrong, but I thought it has come to the planning commission before, and I thought we have had the public hearing on the zoning. So why does it keep coming back? It's
So-
like a greyhound dog.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I wasn't more clear. So
No, I
we've
mean-
approved the comprehensive plan amendment to allow for this rezone. So in December, we sent it to the public hearing. That public hearing occurred on February 27th. Then after that public hearing, then that went to the Plan Commission last month to approve that. And so that was finalized, took 3 different meetings. Then this is the rezone request. Yeah, there's 2 factors here. One, that process takes a while, as it should, because it's multi-stage. 2, the way the meetings laid out meant that no step could get done, multiple steps could not get done in 1 month. So they actually had to wait 2 months to even get to the first step of the process. So
No, I just had
that's
to
why it
ask
feels.
because, I felt it's like a groundhog day, it keeps on coming back every month. And my other comment is, because like you said, it came like 6 months ago, I was hoping by now, somebody had drawn this. I keep on getting the same sketch.
Yeah, so that's the sketch that they have. I think there's a combination of the fact that they won't be changing or building any new buildings on the site, so we didn't need to get like an architect or anything like that. We will be requiring actual drawn up plans for the site plan portion of this. This is just the rezone and no official documents need to be submitted for that.
Well, and that's the condition we have, right, is the conforming site plan.
Oh yeah, that is what we're putting on here. So
Right.
the site plan be applied for and then approved. But that's obviously another process.
Yeah.
So we've got a year to make a better picture for you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this isn't the conforming site plan.
No. So yeah, there would definitely, the biggest things is the concerns about whether the project will go through and be completely viable are from the sort of Department of SPS, as far as the requirements that they will need to make that building a commercial building, stuff like bathrooms, doors, fire exits, sprinkler, yada, 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 and whether that sinks the whole thing. The other requirements that will be a pretty big one is parking requirements, even though our parking requirements are a lot lower than what they used to be. In order to host 250 people, that's 1 space per 6 guests, I think. So that's a significant amount of parking spaces on the property. And then the other requirement that would, potentially landscaping as a result of those parking requirements. So all of that would be placed on the property.
So 1 spot for 6
guests
is significant?
Well, considering that not every wedding has 250 guests, that would be the max capacity. And I would say probably, your average is somewhat below that. So you don't want to ever have the, basically you don't want to have the parking for Christmas Eve for every single day out of the year. If parking is a problem because you have a big wedding, then certainly it's on the business owners to say, hey, parking can be an issue if you have a huge wedding. So please plan accordingly. And that's on the business owner. They know what they're getting into. As far as parking on that roadway, I wouldn't recommend doing it. It would be basically parking on the shoulder. So we've had complaints about that. I don't know if there's actually a restriction on parking on the side of Fancher Road. That could be determined in the future, but currently there is not.
Well, the threat of a great big huge party would probably worry the bride's mother before the bridegroom's mother.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions for Robin or Sam? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a recommendation. The Plan Commission move to recommend approval of Ordinance 11-2023, a zoning map amendment for 423 South Fancher Road, zoning map amendment ZMA 23-5 with the recommended condition.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, Robin.
Thanks for skipping George. Not because we don't like him or anything, it's just that he has better things to do.
Yeah, George had no updates this month, so.
None.
None. He was also on vacation with spring break, so it's that time of year with people with families, so.
It was.
He just got back this week and have bigger updates for you regarding like opening of Campus Park and stuff like that next month.
Good.
Yeah, after the planning conference, I was also out a week after that, and I came back and I was like, "Hey, anything happened when I was gone?" Nothing to report on that matter. So I'll go over our staff approved permits and municipal complaints, and then I'll do a national conference planning report. So here's the staff approved permits. Basically, this is our administrative appeals, the certificate of occupancy, sign permits, site plan review, zoning compliance permits. These are all. And now I just remembered you guys asked me to put the name of the businesses in there, and I did not do that. I did put the types of complaints in the municipal complaints section as requested. So, baby steps. But yeah, these are the sign permits and other things that are issued.
Is there a highlight of something new and
I'm
pull out
trying
of
to
your memory?
think. So the ones on Durand, for Ben Counterman, or no. There's Durand, the sporting goods store that's coming in, where the Dick's Sporting Goods used to be. They got their particular approvals.
The Globe Drive ones are the infill of that St. John's Properties building out near the interstate. So there's the light industrial buildings in the back and then the commercial buildings in the front. Those commercial buildings are starting to fill in now that they've been open and leasing for about a year. So if you see those.
The old Foxconn building that was right on the frontage road there, did I see some kind of a sign for somebody's U.S. headquarters, and what is that?
Otera.
Otera?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that ever came to Plan Commission because they never had any exterior reviews other than signage, but it is a food additives manufacturing company that the CDA and the village board were involved in attracting with our partners at RCEDC. So they are now long-term lease on that building for that company.
That whole building?
Correct. Fully occupied, lab space, office space, production space. So.
Yeah, and I only thing that came across our desk was I approved a sign permit that was like, considering how much space that they could have applied for, was very, very small. I was like, that's tasteful. Speaking of sign permit, there is a zoning variance approval for the Walmart on the corner of 31 and 20, and they just submitted in their sign permit like with a check and everything like this week. Just getting a authorization to go up to 280 feet on the north and south frontages. Yeah. Our Board of Zoning Appeals is very nice. But that's what they do. It seemed pretty reasonable. These are the ones that are currently active and being processed, including the ones that we have kind of gone through today. This is municipal complaints. These are the ones that are currently active, along with the reason for them. I think so. The biggest offender seems to be our plow trucks. So they took out some mailboxes, they pour one out for them. And a couple of general complaints in this, as far as like somebody said that when they call Village Hall and it immediately goes to a message machine, that they don't like that. And a couple of fence neighbor disputes, and a couple of general complaints about trash along Highway 20 specifically. And we're going to be looking into, I guess, whose responsibility that is, because those are a lot of different jurisdictions around the state highways.
I'm glad to see those two made to your list because I filed those complaints last evening.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is actually kind of something that's neat about OpenGov is that it works, and I put it in here and it populates and then shows it in front of you guys. And
I guess the question that I have is, on those, again, as you see, I don't have the address, I have the area, but can you hold anyone, a business responsible for, I'll give you an example. On the Stewart Road, just a guess, because this complaint comes about 2 or 3 times a year. Village goes, you clean it, and after maybe 3-4 months, there's again a trash on that hill, on the. So my question is it coming from people or is it coming from, just a guess could be, there's a business over there, they drive the truck and maybe, on a windy day, the truck is open and it just falls. So can you hold them responsible? I don't know. I'm just asking.
It's where it lands. So like any way the wind blows, it doesn't really matter. It just basically, if it lands there, it's your fault. The only times I've ever actually kind of had something where you have to have like a gargantuan amount of evidence to say that this is your trash. For example, the Walmart on Durand Avenue, or technically the address is Oaks Road, there was a whole lot of trash all around the empty fields behind and the forest to the side. Thankfully, all those bags were labeled Walmart. So it was pretty easy to say that this is your responsibility and give them a ticket for littering. Unfortunately, not a whole lot of other things are cut and dry. And then if it ends in the public right of way, that could be on us to clean and pick up. If it is in the kind of zone where it's in front of a property owner's house, so like a sidewalk or something like that, they have the obligation to maintain that. But that's about as far as that goes. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Robin, as far as enforcement goes, what can you do about something if somebody will not comply? Can you fine them? If so, how much? Or can you actually order them? Make them do something.
That's actually something I will bring up. I can't go into the specifics, but I am going to basically be presenting to the board, village attorney, and administration, kind of an escalation process to take certain cases that are egregious and long outstanding to circuit court. And in circuit court, the fines can be assessed based on the judge's judgment, not necessarily on a specific timetable. Abatement procedures can be awarded, the authorization to go onto the property and clean it up, and then levy and assess the fines as a lien against the property's taxes. That goes on there, as well as asset forfeiture is a kind of thing that pops up at that particular level. That is something that I have yet to do as basically the code enforcement officer and stuff like that, but it's become very apparent that certain properties have been over that line. Administration and whatnot have been hesitant, as have I, about this because there is upfront costs involved. You may get it recouped, you may not, but it's kind of the cost of doing business, much as having officers patrol the streets for speeders. So we'll keep you abreast of those as they come up. But that's basically what we're doing, because there has been certain people that will just pay the fines and then not fix the problem. So that's not the point of what we do here.
Well, I would certainly support your getting all the tools of enforcement that are available to you, because otherwise you can waste your time constantly issuing $100 fines to the same person, as opposed to being able to at least have the ability to take it up to circuit court, because that's a much different playing field, and the owners will take that venue a lot more seriously than an administrative fine.
Yeah, thankfully, Village Attorney Chris Smith is well-versed in this procedure of basically, taking public nuisances to civil court and just suing them to great effect in South Milwaukee. So we're really confident that under his guidance that we'll be successful in curing the problems, because that's what they are.
But at the first level of fines, what is the amount that you fine people?
It really depends on the offense. I would say average is about $500 per citation. So some of these get like 2, 3, 4 citations for various things. One property owner has had 23 citations since 2020, totaling $10,000.
Has he paid them?
Yep.
Jeez.
We're planning on a memorial bench in their honor.
I'll see. A few of them.
So, these ones are the ones that have been completed. Most of those are no snow shovel complaints. Obviously, although cross your fingers, that is done for the year. I don't want to jinx anything. And then the National Planning Conference in Philadelphia was from the 1st through the 4th. I got to, I'm from the East Coast originally. I'm from Virginia, so I've been to Philly quite a few times, and it was really great to go back. Some actually really great content was shared. My always complaint about the national conference is it focuses too much on big cities. It focuses too much on California, New York, all that sort of stuff. But I went to quite a number of sessions that were focusing on suburban communities and how they've been adapting to change and with big ideas. One was a sort of a redevelopment in Johnson, Iowa, that was really cool. But basically they did what we had planned around 2005. It was about the same time frame. They did a mixed-use redevelopment with their civic campus in the center, and it finally broke ground over the course of the pandemic, and it's been a great success. They actually, the front of their village, their city hall, basically also doubles as like an outdoor amphitheater auditorium that basically creates like a cool place for everybody to hang out. And that was great. So the other one that I thought that was really interesting was a session on transit-oriented development for sort of a suburban employment center station. So I was like, wow, that's very applicable. So that was very good. This was a station that was outside, like 40 minutes outside of Philadelphia. So, and about 10,000 people live there. So it was really kind of neat. And it's just always good to share ideas and brush shoulders with everybody. And, Sam and I get a lot of ideas on the table and, just chat about stuff. I mean, he's probably sick of talking to me by now, but, that is what it is. But that's it for me. And I'll hand it over to Sam.
But you do have things that you can tell other people about what is done here.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, I will take one thing. I was chatting with a planner from Colorado, and we were talking about stuff, and they were talking about all the things that were going on in Mount Pleasant with Microsoft, with Foxconn, with these housing developments. And I was like, so what's going on in your community? And they were like, nothing. Not much. We haven't really approved much. And I was just like, yikes. Well, I'm good. I'm glad to be in a place that wants to change and has action going on. That's pretty cool.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you.
Thank you for what you guys do.
So just a couple sessions from the National Planning Conference that I thought were of value to myself. Rob and I actually did some years there's one good session per time slot, and we end up going to a lot of the same stuff. But this year, as Robin said, there was a variety of stuff. So we actually were able to cross-cover a fair amount of the conference. But some things that you all might find interesting that we'll likely try to bring back, some conversations on missing middle housing and housing challenges, obviously a pretty big theme across the country in big and small areas. I heard issues everywhere from Idaho to New York City. So, pretty wide gamut. Everyone is experiencing the same shortage, the same lack of labor, struggle for materials, cost fluctuations, and the same things. So some good sessions focusing on capital and the benefit to like long-term capital outlooks and partnering with developers who have are a little bit more patient in their investment. So we'll try to bring some of that work towards the CDA. There was a lot of focus on fiscal responsibility, with the increasing interest rates and the issues with construction. A lot of communities, particularly lower growth communities, are really focusing on not necessarily tightening the belts, but making sure the developments that they do receive are paying for themselves. So there were a couple good sessions that I attended on basically how to increase the details within our fiscal analysis that we're doing for each of these developments. So it's been a strategic planning goal, and we've added gradually over the years more and more detail that we're presenting to you all. Not just the taxes that they pay, but kind of a longer term outlook. So we'll try to flesh more of that out in the future for you all as well. And then finally, some good sessions on the interactions between parks and planning, which is particularly applicable since George lives within community development. So, how parks can function as economic development, and some fiscal responsibility maintenance sessions as well surrounding parks and how they relate to the wider village budget. So it's pretty great.
Just to add, there's also an online component. So as a part of the fee that we already paid to go, there's also 2 days of online webinars and sessions at the end of the month, which is, those are also really fascinating too. And so those will be a chance to catch up on anything that we missed, or perhaps some new sessions totally. So.
Definitely. And thank you to you all for supporting us and going. Thank you to the village board for continuing to budget for us to do these continuing education opportunities. That's why I want to take the time to bring it back every year. We really appreciate being able to go, and think it's directly helped out many of the planning efforts and continues to push us to become better and have a more regional and global outreach, and not just think about our own problems sometimes. So it's good to be out there in person again and kind of think of the wider context every now and then. So we appreciate you all for continuing to support us and going to this.
Well, we thank you, because from my experience, I know that we were very well represented. So thank you.
I appreciate that. And then secondly, some good news. The village board at its previous meeting also approved both the job description and the budgeting for a planning intern for the summer months this year. That's something I know that the department has had in the past, but we haven't had for probably since I started. So a good 7 years now, 7-8 years. So I think the opportunity to get re-involved in University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and some of the other surrounding universities to support both an educational opportunity to make sure these students get some real-world experience while balancing them being able to help us out during our busy summer months. Everything from municipal complaint inspections to the site plan reviews that we're trying to stay on top of. They'll be a big help and get a wide variety of stuff. So we've already got a few applicants. We'll hopefully make a decision the next week or two, and hopefully I don't know if they'll be here for May, but definitely for June. You should have we'll have a new friendly face in here for the summer.
So a full-time summer?
Full-time summer.
How long
yep.
can you keep them?
About 3 months. It's just the summer months for this preliminary budget.
They do have to go back to school then.
They do have to go back to school, although most of the applicants are grad students. So if this goes well, we'll have that conversation with the village board this fall if it's something that we think is of value to extend further. But for the time being, it's just the summer, and we're excited to have another opportunity to get an intern in the office. So
You're going to allow Robin to send this green intern out on municipal complaint inspections?
yeah, not by themselves.
There's some real world learning.
There will be guiding hands through most of it, but in my experience through the planning program, and speaking for Robin, probably most of his similar experiences, a lot of programs are very theory-based, and so we can kind of buttress some of that with some real-world experience and dealing with the public and public meetings and all that kind of stuff. So look forward to meeting them in 2 months.
Good deal.
That's all I got.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda.
I just have a quick comment, if I can, in regards to announcements for, Microsoft coming. And I saw recently the thing about Dremel Tool was bringing their headquarters of their group back here as well. The Otera one is kind of an interesting one. Those are the kinds of things that I think that we should, as a village, make sure that gets out in the news media. I'm probably one of the few people that probably still gets a newspaper, but I do read it. And I think it's behooving to show the village that, hey, these buildings are filling up and there are people coming in here that are significant employers that are moving here too. Because everybody's wondering, we're building all these apartment buildings, who's moving in them? Well, people that work here.
Yeah.
Because I'd never heard of it until I drove by the other day. I'm going, a new headquarters, what's going on?
Yeah, it's a point well taken. I think Lisa's just been in her role about a year. She has 2 village newsletters under her belt, and is going through a full website refresh this summer. So a lot of this stuff is work in progress. So you can definitely expect to see more of that news start to go out. News from meetings like this, and as well as, business openings or other significant developments. So
But doesn't the village have an outside media consultant under contract? Or?
only for TID 5, not for the rest of the village. That is all
Even-
internal staff.
But for TID 5 even, are they doing a good job of getting positive news out there? Because I don't sense as much going out in terms of positive, informative news about TID 5 to the general public.
Honestly, Tom, it's not my area of the village, so you can have that point with Claude, but I would bring it up with him. In my experience, they've been very professional and good to work with, but, that's not really under my purview, so I don't want
All
to
right.
give you too detailed of a question. Or an answer. That would be an answer to a question. But yes, I mean, village-wide, on the whole, it's something we know is continuously asked of us, and we are working on it actively, so... the stuff that you've seen is not the end, it's the beginning of what Lisa and Megan are trying to build through communications.
Thank you. For that, I'd make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you again.
Thank you.